We're following some breaking news from Washington. CBS News has learned that intelligence officials believe that Russia is trying to interfere in this year's presidential election. And their favored candidate is President Trump. That message was delivered to members of Congress during a top-secret briefing last week. The meeting was held by the official responsible for overseeing election security. She told lawmakers that Russia is actively working to get the president reelected. As Major Garrett reports, the news came as a surprise to the White House.
Sources tell CBS News President Trump was furious when he found out about the classified briefing on Russian election interference. He was not informed the House briefing would take place and, according to one senior administration official, blew his stack and repeatedly used an expletive. The briefing to the House Intelligence Committee took place on February 13th. The Director of National Intelligence's top staffer on election security, Shelby Pearson, told lawmakers Russia is working to help President Trump get reelected. However, sources say there was intense bipartisan pushback on her assertions and questions about the strength of the evidence. The intelligence community concluded in 2016 that Russia had meddled in the presidential election to candidate Trump's benefit, and it has been on guard about renewed efforts this year.
We certainly are seeing and have never stopped seeing, really, since 2016, efforts to engage in malign foreign influence by the Russians.
That was Major Garrett reporting. For more on this, let's bring in CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge. Catherine, what more are you learning?
Well, since Major was able to confirm some broad outlines of the New York Times and the Washington Post that first broke this reporting, I've also been able to confirm elements through a congressional source as well, who emphasized to me that the briefing was of a classified nature. It focused on election interference and election security, and that the assessment that was delivered to lawmakers is that there was intelligence that Russia was trying to assist President Trump in another victory in 2020. But what was emphasized to me through my reporting here at CBS News is that there was pushback over the quality and the scope and the credibility of this intelligence that led to the assessment. That all said, the episode, we were told, led the president to sour on the current acting director of national intelligence, Joseph Maguire. The DNI, for those sort of outside the Beltway, is a very important job in terms of management and coordination and setting priorities. And this is someone who oversees the 16 intelligence agencies and then also this bureaucratic management system, which is known as the Director of National Intelligence, Lana.
Yeah, I want to follow up with you on that, because according to the New York Times, the president, quote, berated Joseph Maguire, who was just replaced as the acting director of national intelligence. What more can you tell our viewers about the relationship between these two men?
Well, I'll say that it's a somewhat difficult relationship. Maguire has been in the job for about a year, not quite a year. He's been in an acting capacity, and if you will, he's really been the public face of the whistleblower complaint in the summer, because that was a complaint that came up through the intelligence community to the independent inspector general of the intelligence community, and then went to the House side, as we all know, for the hearings, and then ultimately the Senate for the trial. What I would also say is that Rick Grinnell, who will now be taking over as the acting director of national intelligence, I know through my reporting, has been lobbying hard for a number of positions within the administration. He's currently been an ambassador to Germany, and I understand that part of his mandate when he goes over to the DNI is to do, quote, what was described to me as house cleaning, if you will, Lana.
Oh, very interesting. I think it's also perhaps not curious, but an interesting timing that Maguire co-authored an op-ed just on Wednesday about the dangers of Russian election interference, and that was co-written with Attorney General William Barr, FBI Director Christopher Wray, and Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf. So I'm wondering, Catherine, is there a sense among the intelligence community, the people that you're speaking with, that the White House is just not doing enough to stop Russia?
Well, the sense that I have through my reporting is that what we saw in 2016 will be entirely different than what we see in 2020. So the Russians, and I think more significantly other adversaries, are looking at the playbook from 2016 and saying, wow, we can really impact the American elections in a way through what they call information warfare or gray zone warfare. That's kind of the battle space between peace and conventional warfare. So they use things like cyber operations and intelligence to, in this case, further divide Americans on key issues. And the FBI Director Christopher Wray recently testified on Capitol Hill in an open hearing. I think was perhaps one of the most significant elements is that other American adversaries have looked at what the Russians did in 2016 and the success, if you will, of that operation in dividing Americans along central issues, that they've also considered adopting similar styles when they target our elections in the future.
Catherine Herridge, thank you.
You're welcome.